Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Live in the Backyard. Today's topic, of course, is soil health. You may have seen that. And I just wanted to start out by talking a little bit. This morning we were sitting on the back porch. I've mentioned before the idea that my garden is a sanctuary, really enjoying my garden, but in the midst of really enjoying my garden. Oh, by the way, we paired up the old flock and the new flock, and they're making a lot of noise these days. So if you hear a little squabble going on in the background, it's the young hens and the older ladies, the biddies as I call them, having a little scrap it out to see who gets to be at the top. So back to what I was saying about your garden as a sanctuary. If you're enjoying, and there's a lot of enjoyment in your garden, then you'll sit around and you'll watch your garden, but you'll also get to see, we call it backyard TV, but you'll get to see a lot of interesting things in your garden that will actually help you be a better gardener. I always like to say one of my biggest gardening techniques to make sure I explain to people is that it's got to be a complete return on investment. If you're giving more to your garden than you're taking from your garden, then you're not going to be happy with it. And so you have to know there's a lot of things about a garden that can be really giving to you beyond just the food that you could grow in the garden. And one of those things is the bird watching. And this morning we actually, Joe pointed out, he pointed over to a sunflower and he said, look at that sunflower right there. He's like, do you see that there's a little bird in there? We don't know what type of variety, only about that big. Black feathers, yellow, a little bit of yellow breasted. And I said, huh. And I had just told Joe, hey, I think I'm going to go ahead and cut down most of the sunflowers today. And he said, why? And I said, well, partially because they're getting in the way, but also partially because I really am seeing an increased amount of aphids and ants on them. So it's really probably about time to get rid of them. And just as I saw that bird, I thought to myself, I bet that bird's over there in those sunflowers eating the ants and the aphids. And of course, that's exactly what was happening. And then another one came along. So there was actually a pair of them here. And I watched that bird do its part in balancing the ecosystem in my backyard. And really, that's what we're working on consistently out here. And one of the things if you go back to one of the January videos of this live video that I was doing, you'll see that this garden, this space in the backyard was actually bare. And now, as we go into it, you can see I've got lots of stuff growing and going on in here. But one of the things that I have to do in order to make this garden, this part of the garden, the most successful, is to really get that balanced ecosystem. And so that transitions me really well this morning into talking about what I wanted to talk about, which is soil health. As we begin to enter July, it's really a time to get back into the garden and really get active. Now, this has been one of those years where the winter was warm, the summer's been cool so far, we've had lots of moisture, so truth be told, we haven't really gotten much out of our garden, but we did slow down in June, right? So now we're moving into July. What is it that we're going to do to prepare for that fall planting? And the things we're doing to prepare for that fall planting are to begin to prep our beds and get our beds and soil ready so that we can plant in them usually in late September. And so when we're talking about soil health, two things that are important to know. One is what is dirt and what is soil, okay? Dirt, you've heard of it, clay, sand, silt, loam, all of those things. That's dirt. That's the minerals that's the breakdown, the rock particle, the minerals that make up the ground we stand on, basically. Okay, so what makes that soil? What makes it soil is the life that's in it. And the reason why soil health is so important is because in order for dirt to grow plants, it has to have life in it. So what kinds of life are we talking about? We're of course talking about the different microbes that are in the soil. These are the microscopic life that's in the soil, the bacteria, the fungi, the nematodes, all the things. If you pulled up there's some life in my garden right there. If you pulled up a microscope and looked underneath a tablespoon of soil in your backyard, you would not be able to count all of the life in that one tablespoon of soil in less than 6 years. That's how long it would take you to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the different things. So it's really nice and fun. That's a great activity to do with your kids while you're at home. possibly connecting with your schools right now while there's a lot more homeschooling happening to have access to a rentable a microscope so that you can look at your soil and just kind of start to learn a little bit about what's underneath that microscope, right? So one of the most important things that we have to talk about is the soil food web. And the soil food web is what keeps the microbes alive in your soil. So you've got bacteria and fungi. And let's talk about what bacteria and fungi's job is. Bacteria's job is what's called the glue that holds those little pieces of mineral, the silt, the sand, whatever you've got, your clay. What's holding it together is the glue, and that's going to be the bacteria that's in your soil. That's the living bacteria that goes around in your soil, right? Okay, then you've got the fungi. The bacteria will come from more sugars, less oxygen in your soil. The fungi will come from more wood particles in your soil, like the heavy wood-based mulch that we use. Then you've got that fungi. The fungi is your little workers, your builders, your truck drivers, your bank owner. I mean, all the things that hold that stuff that actually give it the structure. That's your fungi. And if you open up let me see if I can find some back here. Let's go along. You're going to see me digging in, looking for. A lot of my soil is very wet back here because I've had nothing but rain, nothing but rain. But what I'm looking for is filament, white filament. So if you're digging around in your soil and you see a lot of white filament, then that's what I'm talking about when I say fungi in your soil. See that white right there? That's the building blocks. Now, if you've got too much of that, then you have a buildup of ammonia, and that's where part of the problems come in. And a lot of this filament will actually grow on the root beds, around the roots of your plants. And that's really important because that's how your plants get access to the nutrients that are in the soil. Any of that fertilizer, the nitrogen, any of that stuff, you can't get access to that if you don't have bacteria and fungi in your soil. Something else to keep in mind about your healthy soil food web is low oxygen or anaerobic soil. And when you run into that, then you start to see high levels of pests and pathogens. I'm actually seeing a lot of pathogens in this garden and maybe too much fungi in this garden, right? So I'm working on balancing this new garden, whereas my other garden is a little bit more balanced. Now, what are we talking about when we're talking about anaerobic soil? Okay, so really what I have going on back here is pretty anaerobic. There's just so much flat, wet, and it actually, if you're digging in your compost or anything like that, you can smell it. Now, this actually smells pretty good, but if you start to smell rotting, if it smells bad, then it's too anaerobic, and you're not going to be able to get any real growth in there with your bacteria and your fungi, of which you need in your soil, right? What that means is that there's no hallways. Like, okay, here we are at the bank, and we're going to get our money, and we've got the money is the bacteria or whatever exudates the bacteria is putting out, and the bank itself is the fungi, which is there, the structure that's building and holding the money for us. But you go inside to get to it, but you can't break through the door because there's so much, there's no oxygen, there's no way to get in that hallway to go down to actually get to it. So now you don't even have access to the money that's right there. It's right over there, but you don't have access to it. And so that's an important part of making sure that you have a nice balance. You have plenty of oxygen, lots of different types of materials in your soil. That's an important part of keeping that anaerobic. I'm going to talk a little bit more about why and how. Excuse me, I think I breathed a bug. I'm going to talk a little bit more about why and how, but one of the things that you'll keep in mind is that when you have too much bacteria, that's when you have all those weeds, right? So part of the reason why mulching is good for weed control is because you're knocking out the bacteria and you're putting in more wood mulch, fungi, that type of things. A lot of those weeds won't grow in that. And so that's something to keep in mind when you're trying to decrease the amount of weeds. You're wanting to balance out the amount of bacteria and fungi in the soil. Now, if you lean the other way, where you have excessive fungi, then you're into a situation where you're going to grow more woody growth, like your trees, more of your larger scaled, some of the trees we don't like, weesach, things like that. Those types of things are going to grow excessively. So what we're looking for in a great animal vegetable crop, and when I say animal and vegetable, because of course here in our home we're growing vegetables for our own consumption, but in some situations you might be growing vegetables for your animals' consumption. You might just be growing grass in a pasture so that your animals have good feed to eat. And so in those situations you're looking for a nice balance of the fungi and the bacteria. And that's when you look underneath that microscope and you can tell, that's a pathogen over there, that's a problem, it's got the wrong colors, okay? And then you can look over here and you go, okay, that's a bacteria, okay, that's a good nematode, oop, that's a horny nematode, which means it's the kind that's going to destroy my roots, right? But everything in there has a job, and all it's trying to do is create an equal balance to create a healthy soil food web so that everybody down there has what they need to eat. And then when that occurs, then your plants access what they're excreting, their exudates, and that's what the plants use. The plants exudate as well. What they exudate, the carbohydrates, the proteins, what they exudate is what the bacteria and the fungi eat, and now you've got a copacetic system. You've got a working system together. Okay, why are these things extremely important? Well, one of the reasons they're extremely important is water management. And you can see that one of the things that I'm able to do in this back area here is hold a lot of water. Now, I may be getting into a situation where I need some of the water more of the water to be absorbed, and so I need to add in more mulch, I need to add in more ground cover, I need to add in other types of things that will help with some of those solutions. Pest and pathogen management. Weed management, as I mentioned before, pest and pathogen, if it doesn't have enough, if it has too much bacteria, if it has too much fungi, if it doesn't have enough oxygen, you're going to see more pests and more pathogens. The pathogens are that powdery mildew, the blight, all of those things that you see are actually doing some damage on some of my plants back here in this back garden. Okay, other things, affordable and healthy food for us, okay? So soil management and soil health is the #1 most important thing that you can do to make your garden give the most return on investment to you, because it's gonna be the least expensive. You're gonna have to spend the least amount of money on other types of things to help mitigate the health of your environment, and to make sure you have good healthy vegetables coming out of your garden. And the vegetables that you're taking out of your garden are high in nutrients. Why are they high in nutrients? Because they have access to nutrients. And if they're taking in the nutrients, then they're holding the nutrients, and then you're taking in the nutrients. So your health is equally important if the soil health is equally important. Okay, other ways that our health can be affected by the management of our soil, and that is dealing with the environmental mitigation of what soil can do to help hold water, to help keep us from putting so many different types of synthetic chemicals on our soil, things like that. Part of the biggest problem with that is that we deal with runoff. Here in Corpus Christi, we deal with bay runoff that goes directly into our bay. And then, aside from an odd year where we're dealing with a virus that keeps tourists away from our city, what else might keep tourists away from our city? It would be when our bays and our beaches are full of E. coli, or our water's full of different types of harmful bacteria that we're concerned about. So runoff that is occurring from our particular land is contributing to those problems. It's contributing to hypoxia, which means that there's not enough oxygen in the water. It's contributing to red tide. It's contributing to high levels of E. coli. It's contributing to an antibacterial kill of all the bacteria in our water, which is good, because remember, bacteria is not bad. We need bacteria, we need viruses, we need fungi, we need all of those things. We need them in our soil. They're important. Getting that soil underneath that's health for you. So all of those things are important to keep in mind as to why the soil health is the utmost important part of what we do as backyard gardeners, or farmers for that matter. Okay, so what are some ways that we can deal with some of that? Look at my monarch. Isn't she pretty? I've been seeing lots and lots of butterflies. Monarchs, swallowtails, and then the one I saw a little bit ago, I actually don't know what type of variety that is, but just a little orange caterpillar. Lots of different caterpillars right now. Okay, so let's walk over here because I want to show you a little bit more. My soil is very wet right now, so it doesn't look traditionally normal to what like good healthy soil might look like. But I can just take and dig. Okay, first of all, can you see right here all these little mushroom fungi? That's good guys, right? All good. You want to have that bacteria, you want to have that fungi in your soil. But again, you've got to keep a happy balance. You've got to make sure that you have enough bacteria in your soil as well. You've got to make sure that there's plenty of aeration in your soil, so there's plenty of oxygen in your soil. But why do we want to do, how do we want to do that? Because one of the things that it causes the most problems is a disturbance, okay? So imagine this. Quite easy for us to imagine, actually. Here we are. We've got everything set up for our summer festivals. We've got all these great things going on. And then a disturbance, like a virus or a hurricane or whatever you want to name, comes in and just tears everything up, destroys the banks, messes up the roads, keeps everyone from participating in whatever they're participating in. Well, that's exactly what happens when we till our soil. So one of the houses is to actively leave your soil unturned as often as you possibly can. So the way I manage that, especially in a small scale situation, is that I never turn these whole beds completely over. Now, every once in a while, I may let some chickens get in, scratch around, dig around. You certainly know as I'm preparing over here in this other new garden, as I'm preparing that garden, I'm letting my chickens go in, I'm letting them scratch around, I'm letting them put their fertilizer in, all of that kind of stuff. And but I'm not generally excuse me, I'm not generally disturbing my soil, right? So you may see that I'll pull a little bit of soil back, a little bit of soil, and then I'll insert a plant directly into it. So a lot of times for the transplanting is the best way to have that ability to do the least amount of tillage. So what you can do is flatten things out, lay mulch down, lay litter down. If you want to put a layer of cardboard underneath, that may help you out as well. And then what you do is you break that open just enough to put the transplant in the hole. Because meanwhile, all this other stuff around it hasn't been disturbed, and you still have a system of balanced fungi and bacteria going on around here, and you haven't killed off all of the different microbes in your healthy soil food web. Because every single time you disturb your soil with a till, Mother Earth abhors bare ground because it's not healthy. So she goes back in and she grows weeds, because weeds are going to be the quickest thing to grow, and she grows pests because pests are going to be the quickest thing to grow. So these are part of the reason why not tilling your soil is important. Now there's lots and lots of information out there. You can look at the web in different ways. I'll be doing some more classes. In fact, there's a class on July 11th that's coming up, and then I'll be doing another class where we can talk more in-depthly about really what that's about and what it's about to do no-till and how to do no-till and how to do low-till. That's another way that you hear people calling it. The second thing that you'll do, and I talked about this last week, I've talked about it the last couple of weeks, hi to my bee friend, and that is cover cropping. Now, while we were over in the other garden, I mentioned and I set out last week and pointed to a low cover cropping weed that had started to grow on the ground. Now, that particular weed not only helps to cover the ground, which will help to protect the soil, but it also helps to grow really, really nice deep weeds. Roots. When those really, really nice deep roots grow down, they could grow down as deep as 25 feet into the ground. They can grow deep, deep, deep into the ground. And now they're creating a situation where they're opening up the hallways and allowing more types of microbes to come to their roots and to create that symbiotic soil food web deeper in your soil. Because at the top of your soil, where you've got your topsoil, where you've worked really hard on your soil, you now have a really nice system. But then when you get back down to that hard pan of clay or silt or whatever you have going on down there, you'll realize that you've gotten back into a situation that is potentially anaerobic, right? So anything you can do to grow something that it helps to manage the weeds and helps to aerate the soil is really what you're looking for. So there's quite a long, nice list of different types of cover crops that are available. I mentioned some of them last week. I will mention those in the upcoming classes and things that I do, specifics to that and specific names and things that you can use. But a good example of this that has been used is in areas that have a lot of forest growth. You will almost always find different types of wild berries that grow really close to the ground in a cover cropping situation. And they too help to create that, that change in the soil. They help to grow deep roots, they help to grow fungi, they help to grow bacteria, all of those things around them as well. Now, another option, of course, is livestock, right? Let's come over here. Of course, this is my livestock, and my livestock goes into specific areas that I give them permission to get involved in. Of course, over here they're helping me make some compostable materials and things like that. But livestock does a few things. One, a lot of different types of seeds are best when they've been eaten and then excreted by an animal. A lot of times you'll find that with pigs and cattle and things like goats, things like that. It needs to go through their digestive system in order for it to, the seed to actually take off. So that's one reason livestock's important. Another reason livestock's important is the way that they compress the plant life, that organic material. So cows chewing on and chewing their cud and chewing on it, that particular breakdown of that helps. It helps to knock back the height of things. If you're trying to grow a nice cover crop understory grass that has a really nice deep root, the way that they're coming along and cutting it off, chewing it up, and then putting it back down on the ground is the best, most effective way to help with the soil. They also tromp the soil. I mean, they also step on the soil. They pack it, they move it, they create, they help to create systems that moves the soil around. Like I mentioned before, helping to get your beds prepped, all of that stuff. And then of course manure is a huge part of the nitrogen fixing and nitrogen adding that they can do to the soil. I wanted to walk back here though because I wanted to tell you that I definitely have what would be considered an anaerobic system going on right now in my compost. So this isn't great compost right now. It's got way too much green because I picked up some stuff from Natural Grocers. There was a lot of it available. And it's got, and of course my chickens are pooping over here as well, so that's green as well. And now I've also got lots and lots of water back here. So there's actually a smell coming off of my compost. If you've got a smell coming off of your compost, you don't want that. And so what you'll do then is add a more carbon type of material. Did I get in the wrong place again? Give me some directions back there. Sorry. Okay.
Yeah. So. You kept getting right there, and I'd move and you'd move right back to it. Okay, sorry, that's why I was laughing.
Very good. All right, so I don't remember what I was talking about. It doesn't matter.
You were talking
Soil
about
health,
how
right?
it was too wet back here, and you're actually smelling an odor coming off your compost.
Right, right.
Which
so
we do not get often.
No, we don't.
It's been a heavy rain.
It's been a lot of rain back here. There's a lot of green material. If you start to smell that, then you need to add more of the carbon material back in. So the more woody material, leaves from your trees, the grass that's been cut and dried, all of that good stuff. That's the stuff that you start contributing to your compost. Of course, my chickens will help move it around and get it all happy and stirred up and all of that kind of stuff. What will happen is if you just compress that and keep compressing it, what'll eventually happen is you'll grow too much bacteria and fungi. You'll get that anaerobic, no oxygen. You'll have too much ammonia. You'll have too much exudates in that particular compost. That compost will actually kill your plants rather than helping your plants. So that's an important part of making sure that you have good soil, good compost.
Also,
if your
the chickens are
smells. you need to do something more to it. Don't add it to your beds.
I was going to say the chickens are good referees for all of that, because they're going to continue to work it and break it down and help solve some of those problems.
Exactly. And the disturbance in there keeps you from running into anaerobic problems and stuff like that. So biodiversity is extremely important. Let's go this way. And I will talk a lot more about different types of plants, different types of seeds, and biodiversity in my workshops. But biodiversity means each different plant takes on different roles in the garden. The way that they root is different. The types and the amounts of fungi they put, the types and the amounts of bacteria that each different plant puts in the soil helps to create a more biodiverse system. Mother Nature loves biodiversity. She wants a mixture of everything. And each season you will begin to see what different types of weeds come up in your garden based on the type of temperatures that we're dealing with, the amount of water that how much rain we're getting. All of those types of things affect the growth in your soil. So you will see different weeds in different years because you see different weather in different years. And because of that, you'll begin to understand that Mother Nature is going to grow that seed when it's happy, when the seed is done well there, right? So you may have put a seed in, and then all of a sudden 3 years later, a cantaloupe comes up in that exact same spot that you haven't grown up in ages. Whatever the timing, the soil mixture, the food web, everything that was going on in that soil met the needs of the cantaloupe seed, and now your cantaloupe seed has taken off. And that's where you see that type of stuff. So then, of course, all of those types of things to make sure that your microbes are being fed. That's the most important part of the whole system, is what are your microbes being fed? What types of ground cover? What types of other plant types do you have in here? Are you putting fungi and bacteria in your soil? Are you doing things to help feed the fungi? Looking for a balance. Because you're looking for a balance. Making sure that you have always in all of your systems a really nice balanced system. That's what we're looking for. And the more your microdome, the more your microbiome, that's a better way of saying it, the more your microbiome becomes balanced, the more health you will see in your garden, the more health you will see in your home as well. And the same thing occurs for our own species. The microbiome that exists around our body and in our gut and all of those things are the most important conversations that we're having now about healthcare and making sure that we're taking care of not only our soil health but our body health as well. So, okay, a couple of things I want to update you with. Episode 43 comes out tomorrow of Dinner Table Talks. That's Joe and I's podcast. We launch it every Monday. And tomorrow I take you on a little magical mystery tour. Tune in, dinnertabletalks.com, to find out what that's all about, episode 43. And then in addition to that, you'll see that I have begun doing, right here in this Facebook, on this Facebook page, I have started creating some events. And the first event will be a July gardening class. And I actually will probably do a weeknight version of it as well. So I'll have a Saturday morning version of it and I'll have a weeknight version of it. There are currently in July 2 options because we're dealing with the concern about the spread of the coronavirus. And so I will cap it at only 5 people allowed to actually come to the class. And of course we will be doing all of the things we need to do to make sure that we're protecting each other's health and the health of the families and the other members that we go out to in the community, because that's the number one most important concern about all of the things that we're doing here is our mind, body, spirit, our health, right? But then in addition to that, you'll also have access to online live that's private only for those that have signed up for the class, and I'll email that information to you once you've subscribed to the class. So that's going to be on July 11th at 10 a.m. I will also be doing one on a weeknight this July as well. For those of you that can't do a daytime but want to be in the live interaction. I will also be recording those, so if you did purchase but you're not available to come out to it, you will get a recording of it as well. And I'll be talking about pest management, biodiversity, soil health, preparation, getting your areas aesthetically pleasing and ready for you, all the things you would need to know about getting ready for your garden and what you're doing in your garden in July, specific to July. Of course, I'll also do that one in August and September, and then we can get a nice series going of knowing exactly what is best to do in your garden in the month of July, August, September, wherever we are in the season. All right. I hope you have a wonderful Sunday. I appreciate you all for coming out and being a part of this with me, and I appreciate all of the questions and the interactions. Have a wonderful day. I'll see y'all very soon. Thank you.